Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Pitch Us. Super excited to have Kent here today with SmackSocial. My name is Tim Cooley. I am the author of the Pitch Deck book. Super excited to have you, Kent. Please share your screen and pitch us.
All right, let me get this into presentation mode. Does that all look good?
Yep, looks great.
All right. Your trivia for the day is that a group of jellyfish is called a smack. It's a flock of birds, a herd of horses, a smack of jellyfish. And just like jellyfish, no one should drift alone. Gen Z has a problem. We want to connect authentically with our friends, but we don't have the tools to do it. Here's a quick case study. There's multiple groups like this. They have a Facebook group and they have two different Facebook group chats, but they're capped at 300, so they have to keep people rotating in and out. One chat is just to post stuff to do. The other one is just to discuss stuff that was being posted in the other chat. And Lindsay, the girl that was running this, had to tell people in both chats to shut up and stay on topic a couple times a day. There's a lot of good options for sharing and consuming content with your friends, whether that be public content or just with your friends' private content. And there's options for public experiences like Eventbrite, Facebook events, stuff like that. But there's no real good option for sharing and coordinating events and experiences with your own friends privately. Why don't any of these social apps work? I'm going to go through these pretty quick. Social media, there's no way to segment your friend group or your audience really. If I'm watching Pulp Fiction, I don't want to invite my church group. Messaging apps, these adding and removing people is difficult and stuff just gets buried. Any event information, everyone mutes their ward group me. Group chats are kind of the same thing on iOS and Android, and then you lose friends if you're an Android like me. Community apps are for meeting strangers on the internet, like in To Catch a Predator. Facebook, everyone under the age of 30 hates Facebook, and everyone over the age of 30 also hates Facebook. So all of these have one or all of these wrong with them. There's no way to segment your audience. Group chatter is annoying, and people end up muting things, or whatever you post, whatever events or activity it is, gets buried by content. So we need a better solution. We need something with streamlined event coordination where you can choose who you want to invite. We need something with an aggregated social calendar where you can see all of your social events in a feed. We need easy access to event information. That means we need to decouple the information from the chat so things don't get buried. And finally, and this is an interesting one, no pressure, no RSVPs. RSVPs are broken. Gen Z will not use them. If you don't believe me, I've got some funny examples during the Q&A. This is SmackSocial. We have three main pages in our app. I'm just going to go through this real quick. This is the feed. These are the things that me and my friends are doing. If I hit the plus button, I want to invite people to a movie night. I'm throwing a movie night. Put the information in it, hit next, and I can choose who I want to invite. Up top, you can see a short list. You can create these different friend lists, as many as you want. You can name them whatever you want. And you can sync your phone contacts so you can add people who are not on SmackSocial. They'll then be prompted to send them a text. Tap one button, all of them get an individual text with all the information and a link. You tap either the Instagram or Snapchat button down there and it'll share to your Instagram or Snapchat story, again with the same link. If they are not on SmackSocial and they tap that link, it'll open in a web browser. So everyone you invite has the same information. They can add it to their calendar, whether they're on iOS or Android. If they're on SmackSocial, it appears on their news feed. They open it up, same information. They can then open the chat. You can turn on and off notifications for any event, different people, so you don't have to worry about getting pinged all the time and muting stuff. We have organization accounts, especially here in Provo. YSA wards are huge. Now they have a place to put all their events. And we have a Discover page that is populated by local businesses. We'll get to this later, but that's how we're going to make our revenue. So our primary market is young adults / college students. It's difficult to get really solid numbers on young adults, so we're just going to focus on college students for the sake of the numbers. There's 220 million worldwide. There's 20 million in the US, and we believe we can get 17.6 million of them. We got that number because we went to the 5 largest universities in Utah and surveyed and interviewed over 150 kids. We told them what we were thinking of building. 48% said they would host something weekly. 84% said they would attend something weekly. 88% wanted to download it, but we hadn't built it yet. So that 88% is where we get that sum. Timing. We're in a post-COVID vacuum right now, especially college freshmen. They're coming out of high school, which they had to endure through COVID. and they're hungry to revitalize their social lives, and just going to college in general is kind of a time for that. Let's talk about our traction. So we did an open beta last summer. We did zero marketing for this, and we just sort of let people join the app and watched it grow. These were our numbers through that, and then we locked it down, and we started looking at the way people were using the app, and we refocused ourselves, and we started doing user test groups. So we did every couple of months we would do a set of focus groups. We focus grouped over 50 kids, all active college students between the ages of 18 and 26, and implemented over 250 tweaks and features based off their responses. Our end wow factor score was about an 8.5 when we were done with all of that. We also started tracking our metrics differently, so we can tell you hotspots of where social activity is happening on our app, who's connected to whom, so that we know who to target for our marketing. We also are now tracking the way people create accounts, so we know if they've created an account because they saw one of our stickers out in public and scanned it, or if they created an account because one of their friends shared something to Instagram that they tapped. That leads us to our marketing this fall. We're doing events because those are hot with college kids. We're doing a back to school party. We're doing a set of games. This one's going to be fun. It's a giant game of elimination tag with everyone, all young adults in Provo and Orem, just Utah Valley area. We're expecting about 5,000 kids to play that. And then we're renting the Provo Mall, and they're very stoked for that for a big event on October 14th. We're also doing a bunch of guerrilla marketing, social media marketing, ambassadors, all that kind of stuff that you'd expect. We're going to go back to monetization with business accounts. This is where we're going to make our revenue. I mentioned that we have a Discover page that's populated by local businesses. These businesses pay to be on the platform. They pay, and these are just starting numbers. We're going to scale this up as we gain more traction. They're going to pay $15 a month for an account. If they want to boost one of their events, meaning it'll sort higher in the Discover page, they can pay $10 to boost it for 7 days. And if they're selling tickets on our platform, we charge a 3% promotion fee of whatever they sell. Like I mentioned, those are just our initial price points because it's kind of, in talking to businesses, that was kind of a brain dead price point. They would join, they would pay, and then we can move up from there. Just with the $15 a month subscription, we would expect to break even at our current burn rate at less than 30,000 users. The assumption we're making here is that around 5% of accounts, of user accounts, are going to be businesses. For context on that assumption, Instagram, 10 to 15% of their accounts are business accounts. They are free though. We are expecting our businesses to pay, so it's going to be lower, but we're a more targeted platform, so we're more valuable to businesses. Okay, every time we pitch, someone comes up to us and says that they know someone who tried to do this, and we've talked to most of the people up here as well as a bunch of others. So hasn't this been done already? We're passing bodies on the road, and we've been doing a ton of postmortems. We're talking to everybody who's tried to do something similar. So what did they do wrong, and what makes us different? First is the approach to the problem. The vast majority of social platforms fall into one of two categories. Either a social discovery platform where you fill out a survey and it matches you with strangers on the internet, or a public event aggregator where you open it up and just see public things that are happening around you. Both of these run into a supply issue. No one is posting things. People go to find things to do. No successful social app has ever made it with that kind of a model. The best social apps, the ones that are successful, create a platform to post things to do. And that's what we're doing. So Facebook turned everyone into a blogger. Instagram turned everyone into a photographer. Our primary focus for use case is for hosts. Team imbalance. We've seen a lot of teams, especially coming out of college, where there are a whole bunch of developers that have a good idea, but they don't understand marketing or business, or they're one businessman that has a very strong vision, but that has never developed an app before. We have a really good spread in our team, and I'll get to that next. And the third is cultural distance from users. We found, and I don't want this to be a point about identity, but we found that founders of successful social platforms fall into a very specific demographic. All of them fall into the same demographic. The average age is 25. And the only one who has made a successful social platform over the age of 30 is Tom from MySpace. And a year later, 20-year-old Mark Zuckerberg completely destroyed MySpace. So we have some fun theories as to why that's the case, but for now, we'll just say that that's gospel. The team. Whitney Graham is our CEO and co-founder. These are some of her background. We can talk more about that later. My background is in digital media and product. And Braden Terry, our head of development, went to Mary School, knows all these coding languages. Oh, and by the way, we also have 7 part-time employees and contractors. The average age on our team is 24. So, I mean, if that's relevant. Money in the future. We've raised $400,000 over the last 2 years. That $400,000 has funded our market research, our open beta, all of our development to launch, and it's going to fund us through our first market. We're going to use all of the data that we collect to create a market launch playbook so we can actually have a cost of user acquisition and know how many markets we want to launch in the next year and how much that will cost. And then we will go on to raise a seed round early next year. These are extremely general numbers because they are very dependent upon what traction we get and what our numbers look like, but that was just so we could have something on the slide, and that's the rough ballpark. That's it. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for going through that. So many people don't realize this in the venture world, but a lot of the times we get to hear people present multiple times. And fortunately, I got to see you present this business, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago. So it's great to see the traction you've made since then. And I would say this is actually pretty common for those that are watching in our space. We get to see people progress over time. So kudos to you guys. Now, some of the things I really like about your presentation, I don't think you hit on it very well, but you're a marketer by trade. I believe that's kind of where you're at. And I think you do a really good job of telling a story. We could have put pretty much anything on these slides and you could have carried it all the way through, right? Which is not an easy task. But the way that you presented this works really, really well for you. The way, if we were to give this to somebody else, they would have fallen flat on their face and it wouldn't have worked for them. I want to pull that out. So the feedback that I'm going to give you, I think it still helped this deck, but the way that you have this structured, actually, I know you've practiced this a million times and it comes off very, very clear. So
Thanks.
yeah. So that's a really big kudos to you. Again, like I said, if we were to do the same style for somebody else, it would not work. And this does work for you, but I do think we can make it even better.
Cool.
I love the traction elements that you guys have this early with the company. Those data points that you have of like those growth, it doesn't matter the numbers right now because I think you're getting to the numbers that you need. And I think we can pull those out even stronger if we realign some of the things here. And so with that, I think you did a great job functionally at presenting this. Now let's pull those elements out to make this even stronger if you're open to that.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So let's start here. Okay. I am a strong believer in not having what I call a thank you slide, right? And this in your case is a thank you slide, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though it doesn't say thank you on it. I would highly recommend going back one slide and then really making this your final slide, right? You're looking, I know you guys aren't here yet, but as you guys progress this deck, end on the ask, put your contact information in here. This should be a really busy slide, but you can still make it look really good and match your branding. It should have your logo on it. It should remind people of what you're doing. And then it should remind you like what's the use of the money, as well as the milestones that you plan to hit with this funding. And I think you're not there yet from a business point of view, but as you guys develop this, think about those things.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So end here. I push this on everybody. This is like my Tim thing. And the reason for that is if I'm asking you questions, this slide typically stays up the longest. Yeah. And it prompts the investor to continually remember what you just said over the last 10, 12 minutes. And then sometimes what it'll be like, oh man, I did want to learn more about the business model, or I did want to learn more. And if you have all that data here, it just keeps those questions going, which you've pitched this a couple of times, questions are a good thing.
So would you suggest then on this final slide with our ask to include an element of traction once we have those numbers so they can see?
So from a traction point of view on this slide, I would put capital that's already been raised, right? To just that, like previously raised, 100,000 or whatever your number was. And then I would put milestones that you plan to do with this money, and then how you plan to spend that money
Gotcha.
on this slide, and then your contact information, and
Cool.
then the logo, and then one quick sentence of what it is that you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Right, whatever that is, right? So this is like more of a recap summary. Like, you just listened to me blab for 10 minutes. Here's what I was trying to tell you,
That
right?
makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's go to the very beginning now. Okay. You've got a lot of really cool things that I like about this. I love this. You can stay here. This is fine. Let's go to the next slide. I do love your logo a lot. I think I voted for
Thank
your
you.
logo on something. I don't know
I
what.
appreciate that. Funny
Yeah.
thing, actually, so I mentioned that Gen Z, that there's sort of how to word this. There's sort of an age barrier in this sort of realm, and we've gotten some mixed feedback from people over the age of 30 about jellyfish. And I realize it's because they've actually like gone swimming with jellyfish and they don't like them. But Gen Z grew up watching SpongeBob, so they all love jellyfish.
Mm.
Anyways, that was just
Well, I've swam with
I
jellyfish, and but anyway, I think the logo looks good.
appreciate that.
It looks fun. And I think that's one thing you guys carry through on marketing with this is it's a very fun brand. Even some of the content elements, like with the age and that kind of stuff, is really fun. But like, let's get to the nitty gritty. Okay, so first of all, I don't recommend animations in a deck, and I think you're using animated GIFs. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I have another deck that's just a PDF where these are static.
Okay, so for people who are building your decks, if you want to use animation, I don't recommend it. But if you are, look at animated GIFs because they embed better than a video. And this one just keeps, again, think about this from a branding point of view. You guys did a really good job with branding. Okay. So you're setting the stage here for what the problem is about to come. And I think what ends up happening with this deck particularly is you kind of allude to the problem, and then you do something, and then you tell me more about the problem, and then you tell me like more stuff, and then you tell me a little bit more about it, right? So if we think about like how you broke up the problem statement in this deck, it's kind of in like 3 or 4 areas. And then if we look at the solution, when you're telling me the solution, you're actually adding more problem statements, right? Like you mentioned, you don't need to download the app. Well, that's a huge problem. Like people don't download apps anymore, right? And so I think that there's things like that that need to be in here. So if we go through this, so this is just a statement, so this isn't a problem necessarily. Okay, so this is a problem in the fact that you listed that there's a limit on the number of people that can be in it, right? But I don't get that from here. Like I had to listen to you to say that. And you need to call those things out. Like here are the 5 problems with current group messaging. And I think we could have done that really cleanly. And then we could have said, here's the problems with event hosting applications.
Gotcha.
Right. And we could pull those things out and show a picture of it. Like
Yeah.
your group is capped or whatever those things are. But if what I'm trying to do with a deck is you should be able to send this to me and I should be able to get like a 60%, maybe 90% idea of what I'm looking at. Also, you should be able to present it. And in this case, this is more of like a TED Talk style.
Yeah.
Right. This has to be presented in person. Like there is no way this deck flies by itself. Right.
Yeah.
And we should fix that. Like, because I'm looking for like those like key elements of what you're building. Like for example, let's say all apps cap at 300 people. We don't cap people. Like I'm looking for that opposite. And you do it, but you don't write it down.
I have a question about that. So this is my live presentation deck. I have a second deck that is our send out that has notes and it's written. So it's a readable deck. Should I just have one deck for both scenarios?
Yes. Okay. So this is going to be a contentious comment, but I think that you should only have one. You're going to update that one all the time. Not all the time, but sometimes. But because again, like what if we never get the chance to talk? Right. And I'm not going to read a book. Like I'm not going to read a book. But what I want is, like, if we were to say, like I say this in my book, right? If there's a TED Talk and then there's a consulting deck, which is like all words, we want to be about here. Like, we want to be about 75% a TED Talk and, or, this much closer to a TED Talk, but we still need to be able to read it.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Right. So again, like if we looked at this, I don't even remember what this was about.
Yeah.
Right. If we go to the next slide, same thing.
Yep.
So I don't remember what this is about because you didn't tell me. Right. And I think this is where we go back to, like, there's a huge problem when you try to combine events and group text messaging. What we've done is we've fixed both of them. It's really what you're trying to tell me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that needs to just be called out right in the beginning. All right, so move forward a little bit. Okay, so why don't these apps work, right? This is a great time for you to just do kind of a competitive metrics. Usually you put the competition towards the back of the deck, but in this case, you're actually setting the stage for what you're about to do, right? So you're like, look, there's a problem with when you try and go from group text messaging to events, right? Which is what your chart suggested. And then you're going to say, here's the problem with the current solutions. And you can just group them, right? Like you did it, right? But now you want to show what's wrong with them all. Does that make sense?
So going back to what you said previously about having my talking points listed so it's readable, I would just add the bullet points under the issues with each of these types of platforms.
Yep, you could do that, or you could put them all on one page.
Gotcha.
Right, and then if you notice right at the end of this, if you go to the end of this section, you kind of start to do that here, right? There's no audience segmentation, there's no group chatter, and then you're buried in content. That's true, but is this the communication side of this, or is this the event side?
It's the platform. Why they as platforms don't operate. Right. So this is coming in more as a review of what I already like as a summary of why none of them work. But correct me if I'm wrong, but you're saying it's stronger to list them pretty much under each of the available options as opposed to as a summary in the back of it.
Yep. Yeah, keep me with you. Like if you're on the slide, I want to know what I'm supposed to get from that slide. Right. And so you can recap it, right? So you're like, and you do this a little bit, but then you add more to it. So go to the next slide. Okay, so the solution, go ahead. Okay, so now go backwards one, right? So streamline, next one. There's streamline event coordination, right? So what I wanted to know from those other applications and other solutions is there's no real streamlined event coordination product, right? I know what you're doing here is now you're setting up yourself, but with me seeing all of those, you're like, well, this one can streamline, but it can't group communicate, right? You're doing more of you want it all in one place. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Go to the next one. So aggregated social calendars, right? So, right, like Snapchat doesn't do an aggregated social calendar, right? It's not meant for that platform, right? You go to your next one. Easy access to events. So you could argue that Facebook's is 7 out of 10, right? It's not great. Eventbrite is okay if you know what you're looking for, but if you're trying to find something, but it doesn't really work with your friends, And if you would have put all of that in one place, these things would have been important.
Here's a question.
Yep.
As part of sort of my speaking and presentation cadence, flipping through slides to keep people's focus as opposed to having more information is something that I like, but could I go through these types of things and then end with a table that has the features and the apps and which ones they check and which ones they do not? We had that at one point, but we kind of lost people explaining it live.
Yeah, you could. So one thing is, as long as it's really clear, like because these are grouped, as long as it's clear what the problem is for that group, your cadence was really good. It's just you didn't call it out at the time you were going through it, right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
And then you're like, look, there's the look, I already went through that. So here's the other issue. Here's all those issues combined. And
Uh-huh.
here's the other issues. People don't want to download an app if they don't have to. They don't want to do this and they don't want to do this. So we've got you don't have to recap those things, but now you're going to add those key elements. Like, and these are the other 3 problems we learned of these things, right? Because you solved them, right?
Uh-huh.
Right. So I think that you just didn't call them out.
Gotcha.
Right. Okay. So this is cool. So go to the next one. So you got no pressure, right? That RSVP thing is a really interesting thing, but I don't know what no pressure means. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And in
Like,
context of Gen Z, it makes sense, but in context of a business pitch,
yeah.
Yeah.
Or like just even saying like no pressure or like required to RSVP, like you know, or the pressure to whatever. I don't know. You figure out the words, but okay. So now we're getting into the solution. Again, pull back your logo now. Zoom in on these functions that now you're going to walk me through. So first of all, like the aggregated calendar, right? Step check, right? And then you have to write. You got to remind me. You got to use words.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Right. And then you're going to say like, so you can create an event. It can be about anything. These are just basic event things. Here's a really unique one is you can create groups from your contacts. You don't have to download the app to use it or for even me to send it to you. But all those words have to be written out.
Gotcha.
Awesome. Okay. So we beat this thing down. So I think we're good. Okay. So right now you want to go. So usually you're building your business, the case around the business model, right? So you're going to say like businesses can't do this, therefore they're going to pay to do this, right? But in your case, it's like we're actually building a marketplace for a business user, right? So what you want to do here is somehow is you want to start branching us towards the revenue model, like almost right now, right? So I'd have to play around with this and see the deck again. And this is a lot of times that happens in deck development. It's like you got to go through these phases. But you're like, look, so everybody wants to do this. But so businesses want access to this thing. And that's really who we're building this towards. It's really a marketplace that we're developing, right? So your primary market is it's college kids, but with a focus of getting the businesses to get access to these kids.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just speaking about the market and the kind of entities that we're pitching to, we've heard mixed opinions on what our focus should be in pitching. We've heard one that we should focus more on businesses and revenue and metrics behind that. And then on the other side of the aisle, we've heard we shouldn't mention monetization at all since we're a social platform. And the value is in the scale of how many people we can get on quickly. And we're trying to sort of split the difference, but I'm wondering what your opinion is on that.
So let's do it this way. I think this makes more sense is to bring that up, right? But we'll bring it up in a way that makes sense. So you kind of did it with yours. It's like, look, here's our plan. And before we move on to the business model, we know that our primary objective is to get people using the application. And then we're going to piggyback with a business model later, right? I think you say that here and you're like, and here's what we're looking at for the future from a business point of view, right? There's going to be, and you can bring it up right now. It's going to be $15 a month. We're not pushing this at all right now. If people want to participate and they can test, this is how they're going to test with us, right? Now let's go into, we don't know, like you can say, look, these are our projections over the next 5 years. And you can show that you're not really going to kick off the business sales for like till year 3, let's just say, right? So we can get through that real quick. We're going to take that off the table, right?
Gotcha.
So then we're going to go into market, right? So it's going to go, look, our primary market is to get users. That's what we're doing right now, right? And our users are this market right here, college students, We know how to market to them, blah, 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 right?
Gotcha. So what you're suggesting is move sort of the section about revenue streams, business, that model before primary market so that we can address it quickly and then move on to what we're doing to build our foundation.
I think that would work really, really well for where you're at with this.
Gotcha.
Because you're like, we're thinking about it. It's built. It's just not why we're raising money right now. Like we're raising money to get users on the platform, recognizing that at some point in the future, we're going to turn on the revenue model.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
And we're testing. It's not like we're not going to take money today. It's just not our primary. Does that make sense?
That does. Yeah, that's helpful.
Okay, cool. So let's move forward. Okay. So I don't love animations like this. I get where you got the 88% here, but what I would do is actually break this into like your geographical SOM, right? So you're going to start at BYU, maybe Utah, maybe Weber State. Like you're going to start in Utah. Here's where you're going to go, right? And you can make the argument that like Bubble and Tinder started down at BYU, right? Like, what's that?
No, I was just saying,
Yeah. So anyways, so you're going to say, look, like we know this market works for adopting new technologies, and that's why we're going to start with these schools. And here's our real SOM is Utah focused. Then we're going to start branching out into Colorado or wherever, right? So the SOM today, and I like to use this phrase, is if you were to pick up the phone to call one person, who would that be? Right? And you guys don't have a budget to go to Florida and Washington and Maine, right? You're going to go after Utah. So you're going to start with Utah and then expand out.
So should the focus of this slide be primarily the next, either to the next raise or after the next raise, and what our market is during that time period?
Yeah. So I would say that the SOM is the larger group that you're going to go after over the next 5 years.
Gotcha.
Right. And so, because now you're going to walk me through, because you know how, like, let's say we talked about our business model slide. What you want to show as a KPI is potential user downloads, right? So we know that they had no revenue, but you're going to go, look, we're going to start off with, 1,000 in year one, and then we're going to go to like 1 million and then 5 million. And then if that's the case, then I know that right now you're starting with something else, not this 20. Does that make sense? Or again, the other thing you can do is just drop the SAM and put the SOM in there and put US students and change it from people.
Gotcha.
Because that's really, you're going after students right now.
Yeah. That makes
sense. Other people can use it, but you're going after students.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So think about that as you look at this slide. So either get rid of SOM and just leave it at change the SOM and SAM and flip that and only have the 20 million. Because like, again, if you're growing and you're at 100,000 and then 500,000 and then 1 million, that's a really good growth of users over the next 3 to 5 years. And that makes total sense. And then you can say, look, we're starting in Utah. Once we hit 500,000 downloads, we're going to be moving to Arizona, Idaho, whatever your plan is. You can
that makes sense. So just make it more geographically and time bounded for these markets.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool.
All right, so market. Now let's go next. Okay, so this is when you start to get into some of your data points. So now we're really into traction at this point, right?
Yeah.
So let's pull out the word traction, right? I don't know if you need the survey data anymore. I know that you use this as an explanation of the SOM. I don't think you need that really, because we know you're going. Then I think bringing up your chart of growth is really important.
So just move this behind this.
Yeah, so I would go.
With.
Yep. So I would go traction to the next. Yep, right here, and then go into the next things. Yep, September. So it is end of 2023, and this says September 2022.
Yeah, this was last summer.
Yeah. So where are you guys at today?
We're at 1,200 users.
Okay.
And that was, so what we ended up doing, because we put this out there just to see what it would do, and it was growing on its own. We're like, this is cool. But then we realized we needed better metrics on how people were connecting, what they were using the app for. and where they were. So then we made it by invite only. So you had to tap someone else's link. And so we like plateaued intentionally. And even then we still got like 400 more users just from people inviting their friends. But
Totally. So I think put the entire timeline on here is really important.
yeah, here's a
Right.
question on that. To me, the purpose of this was to demonstrate the potential for a J curve. And so the plateau is not the interesting part, but because this is when we were open, and not locked down to invite links and or stuff like that. But
Totally.
I don't know.
Yeah. So I would put everything up until today in any kind of traction element that you're doing. And because you can speak to what you're doing, like, look, we just opened it up to nothing and grew like crazy. We stalled growth to make sure we understood what was happening so that we could create a marketing plan. And then eventually we're going to open it back up. But right now we're kind of in a closed beta again, semi-closed beta, right? And that's okay. That's an okay story.
Cool.
Right. So again, what it looks like to me in this chart, just again, we've got seconds, is you launched in 2022, the company completely died, and now you're like trying to revive the company.
Gotcha.
Right. Which isn't true. Right. That's not the story. It's just you didn't give me all the data.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So move forward. We're staying in traction. Okay, that goes back to another. I don't think you need this slide or this concept. This is a really cool concept. Put some words around this.
Yeah.
Right. So again, now you're speaking to, we closed the beta. We really wanted to find out how people are using it. Here's how they're using it. And you can show me that. And then go to the next one. Okay. So you're like, what we learned is now we know how to market to these people. And here's our marketing strategy going forward. We're going to run events. Here's a cool event that's happening in about a month. You know, I know you're going to raise capital in a couple of weeks, but you're going to give me data points off of this later in life.
Yeah.
And then again, you don't need this slide because it's kind of implied with the other slide.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So here's a question. I feel like in the past and probably still, we hit the details of our marketing strategy too hard.
Yeah.
Is it kind of assumed that are people actually interested in what we're doing? Because to the mid-20s, they think it's super cool that we're bringing in a helicopter and doing all these different things, but no one else cares in a pitch.
Nah, it's not as important as people think, because what I kind of don't care how you're going to get your users to use the app unless I ask for it. Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And in your case, you brought up one of the things that's coming next is why all the other people have failed. This is another problem statement, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like this needs to be more at the beginning.
Here's a question on that. There's a little bit of a bait and switch, and I don't know if it's effective. I try and bring this up at the point when people start remembering all the other people they've talked to about this same idea. Yeah. And because I feel like in pitching this, we've heard a lot of other pitches like this, and a lot of them have very similar ideas. And when we get to about that point in our deck, we've had people raise their hands and ask for comparisons and stuff like that. So I don't know if it's stronger at this point or if it should happen earlier.
Yeah. So typically I recommend put the competition at the end of the market slide.
Okay.
But what I don't want you to do is introduce new solutions, right? So you're going to introduce new problems, and that means you're going to introduce new solutions. And you really want them to stay in the problem solution area. Go to your next slide. Yeah, go to the next slide. Yeah, so now you're going back into the solution part. You see? So you're saying, look, here's what's wrong with all the current social media platforms. we're about 3/4 of the way through the slide, and you're like, this is what was wrong with all the other people who tried to do this. Right. And so you're kind of really want to put that all in the beginning, in my opinion. I understand what you're saying.
Uh-huh.
And that works really well in like a sales pitch, right?
Yeah.
Like, so there's my friend Rick, he and I have this joke, and it's like, hey, I have the 3 best things that will change your business. And let me tell you a story. Right. What it did was I just put you on the hook for something that's coming. Right. You're waiting for the 3 things. And I'm like, well, let me tell you a story. And I give you my story. And then I give you problem, whatever, number 1. And then it's like, well, let me tell you a story about that. And then you've just delayed it. Now you've been listening to me for 3 hours.
Uh-huh.
And you watch any Tony Robbins, that's what happens. But anyways, that's kind of the same approach you're doing, which works really, really well in sales. But in this case, in an investor pitch, typically, it's like, I already know, or like, wait, what are we doing again? Like, it makes more confusion than.
Here's another question. So the other startups that have the other attempts, I do feel like we need to bring them up after the discussion of how our app works, because that's where the parallels get drawn. I feel like before we've explained how the app works, I feel like people aren't thinking of these other attempts.
You can bring them up in the act, like if you created a real like competitor slide, right? And you can put like, it's another way of like, look, I'm telling you what's wrong with the current solutions that are working. Right. And now I can tell you what's wrong with the solutions that didn't work. I've never seen it done. Trying to think of any other deck that's done it where they've compared the ones that didn't work. I can't think of any, but I imagine we can talk about it offline. But I think it is one of those things where you have to play around with the timing. And I completely understand why you did it this way. If maybe we can fix it and see how it works differently.
Yeah, sounds good.
Especially once let's fix that first part. Get to the problems really clear, and then the solution really clear, and then we pull out those words, and then I think we'll have to test it and see how it goes.
Cool.
Okay. For those that are watching, pitch decks are an iterative process. It's not like a one and done kind of a deal. All right, move forward. Keep going. Yeah, these are so true. And I think that this is a funny thing about with your style is you want to bring humor into it. And I think you need to, because it's showing youth into this brand.
Yeah.
Culture of distance from users is really important, right? Like it is a true statement. I do think that could be done at the beginning.
Yeah.
I think so. Let's try it out and see what happens. But I do think it could be done at the beginning.
Because I want to. This is kind of a dangerous slide, because I feel like I have to establish a little bit of comedy in the room before I tell the room that they're old. You know, like I've had you were at the Rev Road pitch and it worked really well there, but I always feel like it's such an important talking point. But when we're talking to investors, it's not a group of 20 some odd year olds. It's middle-aged people that are very successful. And so I feel like leading with that, I don't want to turn anyone off or make anyone uncomfortable by pulling this out too early. But I don't know what the room thinks.
Let me give some feedback. So Rev Road, I love the team over there. It was a pitch competition. It wasn't an investor pitch. And those are very different styles of presentations. Yours worked out well because it was super memorable. It was funny. I think you won money, if I'm correct.
Yeah, we won the FiberNet Suite Award, and then one other thing I want to say. Yeah, it did well. I felt it did well.
Yeah. So it went well. You won something, but that's typically, this is a really great, the next thing from a sales pitch, it's very memorable. You made it funny. I remembered the logo, like all those things. But the investor pitch it's a very different thing. We're looking for certain things, right? I don't want to be confused.
Gotcha.
You like to laugh, but if it's done in a really well, like organized way, then you can accomplish both at the same time.
So I think I approached this pitch from a competition perspective and from like a mass room perspective, but the focus for this one is individual investor small rooms.
Right. I would say that if you're building an investor pitch deck. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move forward.
All
this
right.
is awesome, by the way. Okay, these are great. I still think you can use this. I think it's important to your story.
Yeah, and in previous decks I've had it all on one slide, and I'll do that for the investor deck like this.
Cool.
So that way I don't have to tap through however many.
Yeah. So team, go to your team. I would put all your team on one slide.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing that I would do is you guys have some really good brands on here, and these are beautiful, very, very, very well done. One thing I would do is just write like what they're doing, like what is Whitney's background, like what is her, like why is she not presenting, for example, right? Most CEOs you expect to present. If you go to you, which is next, I think. Like call out like, you're the CMO, like whatever, that's great. Just put those on there. I think with your guys' team, think about like you just mentioned everyone's young.
Yeah.
Now we want to see also who the gray hairs are, who's your advisors in this team, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't do it on your own, but it does say, look, we value the input of other people. If an advisor especially put money into the company, that's a huge bonus.
Gotcha.
So put those all on one slide will be huge. Okay, that's good. So team, and then we can go into the money option here, right? So what's next? So you raised I didn't even see this slide. I must have been writing down. Okay, raised 400. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Go to the next slide. Research, beta development. This is what you did with the money?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Remember, those two elements should go in traction.
Gotcha. So money raised as well as where that money went should go in traction and where that money will get us to?
Yep. So you could say, look, we started this in 2020 or whatever the date it was. We did some preliminary surveys, which you did, which gave us enough confidence to move forward. We, raised 400K, launched version 1, open beta. Here's some data points that we got. Closed the beta, got some more data points. Let me show you those. And now we're ready to go to the next phase.
Gotcha. So as far as, and like we talked about, we're going to move this whole shtick somewhere. But it would go, and we're going to move this as well. So we're going to talk traction. So traction is sort of towards the end of the deck.
Traction should come right after like that market section.
Gotcha.
Right. So they're like, look, there's 30 million people who want to use this. Let me show you some data points that prove that.
Gotcha. So problem, solution, market, traction, ask.
So problem, solution, business model, all the numbers, marketing included, then traction. What you don't have in here is the milestones, what you plan to accomplish next.
Yeah.
And then it's team and ask.
Gotcha.
That's the order I like. I think it flows really, really well.
Yeah.
And you don't miss anything, which is what most entrepreneurs do, is they actually skip something. In this case, we don't have milestones.
Yeah.
And so then it goes ask, which is just a summary of everything that we just talked about.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There you go. Okay, let's see what's next. Market playbook. Go ahead next. Yeah. So then we're going to end with this slide.
Yeah.
So any questions on any, you asked great questions. So any other thoughts or anything you'd like to ask?
No, I think I asked them all during. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, the question we like to say on the show is based off of what we heard today. Would we move this company onto due diligence? I know you're not raising capital. I did like the way that this is a company that I would follow, right? Because you're about 8 months out from raising capital anyway. And so really what I would want to follow in this case, and I will because I do work with angel networks, is, what are your traction elements over the next 6 months?
Mm-hmm.
And if you hit a couple of those benchmarks numbers, you get to, and I don't know, let's say it's 10,000 downloads or 20. You blow us away with that marketing campaign that you do in October. Mm-hmm. Then I'm like, okay, this is interesting. These guys know how to acquire these types of customers. And it makes sense that in a year, when they get 2 million people on the platform, which they're on projection for, that there could be a business model here.
Cool.
So my answer is I'm definitely following this. I've been following it since I saw you last year anyway. So
Well, we're flattered.
yeah. So and I also liked the pitch back then. So now let's just take it to the next level.
Cool. Sounds good.
Awesome. Well, Kent, thanks so much. If you guys are out there, please check out the book, the Pitch Deck book. It has everything that we talked about today and why it needs to be there, plus a whole lot more. And if you need help with your finances, check out Forecaster. We have a link in the description. And then, please apply to pitch. We really love doing this. It's free. We don't charge anybody to help them out. And so we'll see you all next time.